Greetings, friends, and welcome to our Wednesday or any other day Bible study. Um, it's great for you to join us, and we've been doing a pretty long series here early in 2022 called Jesus and. We've done Jesus and a lot of things: mental health, Jesus and other religions, Jesus and a lot of things. It's been interesting. Those are all archived on our website, or you can go to YouTube, look at Myers Park United Methodist Church. They're all there. And they've all been really good. I thought it'd be fun to do one here on Jesus and dining or food. I don't know what to call it. I wrote a book a few years back called Worshipful. And in it, I took everything that we do in worship and asked, how do you do that all week long, right? So if we take up the offering in church, what do we do with our money all week long? If in church we say, I believe certain things, how do I articulate what matters to me in the course of the week? All these things. One is eating. We have Holy Communion. We have a little meal. How does thinking about that impact all of our meals, all of our eating? And Jesus is so interesting about food. Jesus really cares not what you eat as much as where you eat and with whom you eat. That's like a big thing in the spiritual life, and being close to Jesus is taking that seriously. So I reached out to Ed Price at the Community Matters Cafe, and he gave me a great conversation. I'm going to share that with you now as our weekly Bible study. Thank you for joining us. Ed Price, greetings.
Good afternoon. Actually, good morning.
Yeah, it's one of those somewhere. How are you?
That's right. Doing great. How are you?
I'm fine. Where are you from originally, Ed?
Originally from New York. Moved here about 16 years ago now.
New York City?
Yeah, New York City. Used to work in New York City, 30 Rockefeller Center. Yes, sir.
Oh, really? Well, culture clash to come into a little town, Charlotte, North Carolina.
That's terrific. So many bankers here. A lot of folks have transplanted here over the years, so it really does feel like home.
Oh yeah. Tony Marciano that you work with said to me one day, I said, what's cool about Charlotte? He said, people come here, but also people who live here, they go away and then they come back home. I don't know if that's true or not, but
I think it's true.
So you're at the this morning. You're there at the Charlotte Rescue Mission.
Yes, sir. Actually, in Community Matters Cafe right now.
Yeah, so those are paired, right? Community
Correct.
Matters started out of the Charlotte. Tell a little bit about the origin of that.
So the origin was about 5 years ago, came on staff, and the concept was to take this abandoned building of sorts that was on the property that had been sort of threatened to be torn down by the board over the years and turn it into a coffee shop and a restaurant and bring it to life as part of the program here at the Charlotte Rescue Mission.
Well, it is super successful. Goodness, the place is it's a homey, warm place. The food is really good, and the people there are amazing. So I absolutely love going to Community Matters. If I get my choice, I say, let's meet over there. And then many say, do you have a favorite dish on the menu, by the way?
You know, I'm an egg and breakfast kind of guy, so anything breakfast related I'm fine with. But having been here for 3 years, you start to get into that grind of you eat the same thing over and over and over again just for efficiency's sake.
So tell a little bit about the business model of the Community Matters Cafe.
So the business model, it's a social enterprise. If you're familiar and from Charlotte, I was part of the origin of the catering business over Project 658 in East Charlotte, which is a Christian ministry. And that legacy led us to be introduced here at the Charlotte Rescue Mission to take front-end business that serves customers and create some type of profit, if not an over-the-top profit. But ultimately, this is a program about people. So we modeled and mirrored other social enterprises on the landscape around the country, and we figured out some best practices. And with generous donors who came alongside of us, we were able to walk into this space with zero overhead, except for the monthly bills that we pay. And ultimately, we serve about 2/3 of the men and women that you see here on what you would sort of view as staff, whether it's a server, a barista, or a cook in the back of the house. Those are going to be people who are in a program of addiction recovery. So they've come through the mission after a 4-month program, and they'll spend an additional 6 months here. And we continue to provide for them housing and transportation and uniforms and a little bit of a stipend. And we call them students. It elevates them from being part of the mission and being called a resident, and we give them a different identity when they step into this space. But it's really truly about life skills. It's helping the men and women who are in this program to understand that life is weird. People are weird. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be strange. And it gives them a little more time in the cooker to get that right, because they all come here with, that brokenness and that shame. And it really helps them to understand that there's this extended period of grace that we provide here at the cafe. And it allows them also to work on things like credit and weird stuff with banking and maybe alimony, child support, driver's license issues, something little to you and I, but it's a big thing to them, and it'll reset them back to addiction through relapse. And we try to prevent those obstacles and try to clear the path for them.
There are, last time I was there, I looked over at another table and I saw 3 very successful, high profile business people.
Yes.
But I know one of them well, and I thought, now there are 3 people that are broken, and at least one of them I know carries a lot of shame. Isn't that interesting? Like just the human condition.
I would say that the interesting part of this is that we started out intending to serve the men and the women that were coming through the Charlotte Rescue Mission. It's become a 360 ministry, in that if I explain to you that almost every staff member has some connection to addiction or brokenness or shame, as we all do, but where they came here thinking they were sort of laying down and going to be servants and serve, they're in turn being served by the work that we all get to be a part of. Our customers become partners very quickly once they learn what we do and how we do it, as do even vendors that drop off here once they understand what we do. So I always call this a 360 ministry.
A lot of people, I try to help my people think through a connection between their work and Jesus. Because they think, well, I do work and I do Jesus, Sunday morning and such. Maybe I do a Bible study, but what's the relationship? So you have people that their work is part of their relationship to Jesus. Talk about that. What does Jesus care about our work?
I've tried to create an atmosphere that there's no difference between marketplace and ministry. There's a lot of folks who carry the burden of providing and being in the marketplace, and they'll say, hey, when I get to that place, 55, 60, I'll go serve. We create this atmosphere. Our primary value in our core values is love. We want to make sure that we portray and we are love to not just our students, but those that we encounter in and around this space. So we carry it that our work is so important, and we just reset ourselves this past Christmas, New Year. We closed the restaurant for about 10 days, and we go on a little bit of a retreat, and we talked about mission and the concept of even the cook in the back, who maybe doesn't encounter the residents or students as often as we do up in the front of the house and doesn't feel connected to the customers. They're still vital to the mission, and they're still fulfilling the Great Commission, and they're the hands and feet of Jesus because they're diligent in their work and they're trying to produce excellence. And our food is well respected and loved around Charlotte, and that all carries through the restaurant. But that message of love and that message of the gospel is so primary to what we do that we don't ever lose it. Even those that I would say believe in our values and have signed a letter or a conditional, agreement when they come on as employees, maybe they're not active baptized believers, but their heart is truly love. And that's part of our core values at the mission. We don't require anybody to be Christian when they walk in the doors. You don't have to be a specific way, shape, or denomination when you leave, but you're going to hear the gospel every day while you're here.
2 of my kids have at some point been servers in a restaurant. They'll tell you that these customers will test you all the time. So thinking about Jesus and food, that's a big thing. I wrote a book a while back, and the opening sentence of one of the chapters is God loves food. Which I think is right. Jesus multiplied food. Jesus cooked right on the shore.
Right. That's right.
That's amazing. So that whole process of how food comes to us, right? It's not just now we thank you for the food. God doesn't float it down on a plate. God created the earth, it's farm, somebody delivers, somebody cooks, and all that goes into that process. So but you're saying it's about people in love. Do you have a story of transformation?
So interesting. I mean, I've got dozens of stories of transformation. I'll give you my most recent graduate who came through the program. And the interesting thing, this is, Clinton. Clinton came through the Charlotte Rescue Mission prior to COVID for that first 4-month program. And then just as COVID was getting started in the early part of 2020, he came into the cafe program and he completed that successfully. I remember, just as a side note to the conversation, I always get new levels of appreciation for the men and women that we deal with. Right as COVID started, we came back from one of those first weekends where everyone was boxed in and trying to maintain that social distance within their family units. I said to Clinton, how was your weekend? Did you feel like you were trapped and did you feel confined? Because he was at an outside relationship that we have for housing. And he said, I've been in smaller places for longer periods of time, which clearly meant that he had been in prison at some point, but it sort of set me back. And I went, how silly of me not to think that, you might have a different level of appreciation for isolation. All that to say, Clinton graduated in the early part of COVID. I think it was the spring, summer of 2020, and he relapsed. And rather than give in and try to get right on his own or go further down the path, the first thing that he did was he called back up and said, okay, I need to come back because I didn't get it right the first time. There's more here than meets the eye. So Clinton came back second time, went through that 4-month program. It takes a lot of humility to say, I messed up, and I messed up really bad. But walked through the doors of the Charlotte Rescue Mission the second time, completed the 4-month program, and he was our first repeat in the cafe. So we let him come back through the cafe program, and he was a different person, really committed to the program. And watching him grow in his faith this time, because he was trying to do it on his own. You can carry recovery on your own for a minute and be free of substance, but those, you referenced it earlier, that shame, that stuff that they've tried to compress over time with substance and with alcohol will continue to rise up unless they deal with that, and they create a greater relationship, vertically rather than horizontally. So he just graduated last Thursday, and we watched him grow in love and appreciate and be able to receive love as well as give love. And I'm thinking about that right now, to where he genuinely respected other people, where he tolerated people in his past, and only the love of Jesus and that compassion and that relationship and surrendering to that relationship has allowed Clinton to grow, if that makes any sense.
No. A few years back, I got connected to a guy that runs a bunch of very fine restaurants in New York City, the guy named Danny Meyer, the Grammar Tavern, this Union. Anyway, he wrote a book called Setting the Table, and I made all my staff read it, and I've had a bunch of clergy read it. It's a book about hospitality.
Yeah.
And what he says in there is that the restaurant business is not really about food. You have to have food. It's about people. It's about hospitality. Mm-hmm. Now, with Jesus and hospitality, it's interesting. Jesus doesn't say, welcome people. You put out the right napkin. That may be a thing. Details like that may matter. But Jesus has all these, one faux pas after another at a meal. So, in Luke 14, Jesus is sitting at a dinner with somebody, and he says, when you have a dinner, don't invite those who can invite you in return. Duh. But instead invite those who could not invite you in return. This is when the Bible is clear, people come to me, I say, we got Luke 14. Like, about that. Talk about Jesus and hospitality.
The interesting thing about our space is that we are part of the Charlotte Rescue Mission, and our core values and in our incorporation documents, we are clearly about the gospel, but we don't put a flag out front that identifies us as a true Christian organization, even though we are at the roots. And that allows this space to be open to anyone and everyone to come to the doors. And they encounter us, and I always say that we only have customers for about maybe 3 minutes, maybe up to 30 minutes, until they figure out what we do and they understand that we're in the human services business. We're not in the restaurant business, to refer back to what you were saying. This is about hospitality to a level of just trying to get people to understand that this is a welcome space. I've tried to instill a sense of excellence. If you've been to this space, you understand that we did it with great excellence. We could have put together a decent cup of coffee and a reasonable grilled cheese, and you might visit once. But the value of what we do here is got two sides. We want to create something excellent so people return, but we also wanted to take men and women who have mostly been homeless before they came to us and give them a sense of real purpose by involving them in something that's so incredible. So Jesus wants the best for us, right? He really always wants the greatest thing. And I remind the men and women in this program, I get to sit in some of their devotions, and I remind them, he saved you, not just, spiritually and emotionally and mentally, but physically, he saved you. He preserved you for this very time, and he saved your life so that you've got something in your future. It might be tomorrow, it might be next month, year, whatever that looks like. And whether it's one person or thousands, but he saved you. And I try to remind them, the things that are happening to you here in this space right now, difficult customer, strange relationship with a coworker, staff, whatever that looks like, that's all part of this. This is not designed to abuse you as a worker. This is designed to grow you as a person so you're better prepared to serve God.
That's beautifully put. I want to read something to you from, do you know who Father Gregory Boyle is?
I've met him in person, and I'm actually sitting right next to the spot where he had breakfast with us 2 years ago, right before COVID. So he was in town.
We had brought him to Charlotte, and he gave a talk, and it was hilarious. I saw he was telling things I've heard him tell before. He was telling things I've read before. He told it, and I was sobbing.
That's right.
It's a great story. One of his stories is, and he means no disrespect to big, formal, nice churches like mine, where it's a fancy place, right?
Right.
But he talks about the word chalice. So at Holy Communion, like it's remembering a meal, but we have a chalice. It's a fancy cup. So he writes this. He says, "We've wrestled the cup out of Jesus' hand and replaced it with a chalice." Because who doesn't know that a chalice is more sacred than a cup? Never mind that Jesus didn't use a chalice. Then he tells about one of the guys in his program who'd been a gang member. That's his main work in California. And the guy came in, and Father Boyle said, "What'd you do for Christmas?" He said, "Well, I got a turkey and cooked it ghetto style. And I had 6 friends who came over," and he named the 6 friends. And Father Boyle recognized that they were from warring gangs previously, having this Christmas turkey together, ghetto style. And here's what he says. "So what could be more sacred than 7 orphans, enemies, rivals, sitting in a kitchen waiting for a turkey to be done?" Jesus doesn't lose any sleep that we'll forget that the Eucharist is sacred. He's anxious that we might forget that it's ordinary, that it's a meal shared among friends. What does that strike you?
It is so interesting to see the diverse mix of people when I look at the staff here at the cafe and even the rescue mission. And then we get to combine that with the service that we provide to the men and women that we're blessed to be a part of their lives for a little bit of a season. You've got the senior citizen who was widowed at a certain age and never really involved herself in drugs and alcohol, but someone introduced her to crack cocaine at the right time, and she went down the road of addiction. You've got the Charlotte boy who was raised and went to great schools, and his dad became his drinking buddy when he turned 16, and that produced a lot of unnecessary fruit in his life that caused him to go down a road. The college athlete who was on a scholarship and never abused or used and had an accident and on the field and lost his scholarship and went down a road from prescribed pills to buying pills to snorting heroin to shooting heroin, and became a heroin addict inside of 9 months. And then you've got, what we call good old drunks, just have engaged in drinking their entire lives and buried themselves in that. And when they wake up from that addiction, put all of these folks in the same place, and there's a common denominator. Most of them have started drinking at the age of 12, 13 years old. That was when they had their first sip of alcohol, which leads to worse and more dire straits. And what happens to them is socially, emotionally, spiritually, they stop growing. And when they stop using substance and they press into their recovery, we've got a group of 12, 13, 14-year-olds that are our servers and our baristas and our cooks and our cleaners. And what teenager do you know that wants to be on time, be held accountable, be responsible, and deal with others on the regular? They want to throw down when they get angry and they want to storm off. And we get this incredible privilege to bring those orphans together, right? Because these are folks that in many cases had very, very difficult upbringings, which is a great term, orphan. And we get to bring them together, and God brings them together and delivers them to this place in this space, and they cross the threshold. of the mission, and they progress through this program. And we watch their transformation. That's the word that we stand on at the mission, is transformation. It's really, truly a privilege to see, and not always a privilege. Sometimes it's really difficult work. But the end result, when we look at the majority of folks that continue down that path, we get to see this incredible results where the love of Jesus just transforms people's lives.
So if we're going to talk transformation, let me ask you this. You've been down here 15 years, the cafe 5 years. What has God done in you through this work?
Wow. That is an incredible journey in and of itself. I always say I didn't have a true, what most people would think of when they talk about addiction. I'm in recovery myself. I was a serviceman. I had an automobile accident and it broke some bones, and I had some manifest injury that over time progressed. And in the VA system here in Charlotte, up in Salisbury, had some surgeries to repair my elbows and wrists and hands. And ultimately, they were excellent at prescribing medication. So I always took my medication as prescribed and was understanding that this was a regimen. And at some point, I hadn't had a surgery in a while, and I decided that I was going to stop taking it on my own without any doctor's recommendations and advice. And not knowing how this thing would work, these drugs had replaced all those normal chemicals in my brain and my body over years that I was taking. And this was a series of 7 surgeries over 4 years. And in 24, 48 hours, I had an exit strategy, which was take my own life, and life insurance and Jesus would take care of the rest. And I just clearly remember having that aha moment where I said to my wife, I've got a problem. And it led me down my own road of recovery. And I've been sober ever since. And I thought that when I made that decision and pressed into recovery and some group treatment and individual treatment and tried to understand what had happened to me and why I went down that road, that it would be one of those things that I put in my back pocket. And I wouldn't really talk about. Somebody would say, would you like a drink? I'd say, no, thanks. I just don't drink, or don't even have to make an excuse. To think that God's sense of humor brought me to the steps of the Charlotte Rescue Mission, to where I'm almost complete with my master's program in addictions recovery for pastoral counseling. And I've gone down to this place where I tell this story just like I'm telling you 3, 4, 5, 6 times a week. But it also gives me a platform where our students and our residents, when they say, well, you don't know, I say, hang on, I've had a rageaholic dad and an alcoholic mom, and have seen plenty of that in our family tree. And there's lots of icks in my family tree. I said, so I've got a few T-shirts and bumper stickers, and maybe even a tattoo to go along with some of that stuff that you've gone through. Maybe not in the same capacity. Never been to jail, never got arrested, never had a DUI. However, there are elements of recovery and addiction that I have sort of struggled through at certain points, and still continue to make this a day-by-day thing. So I walk alongside the wonderful people that we get to serve, and I remind them it's a lamp unto our feet and a light unto our path. That's what He provides for us, and that's a tenet of recovery, is just for today, right? You don't have to worry about tomorrow. So He's done a whole bunch in me and my family, and the fact that I get to use it as a little bit of a platform is just His sovereignty. It blows my mind.
So Ed, thank you for being a missionary of hope, an ambassador of hope. We have a building that we're building, and it's going to have a cafe in it, and you guys are helping us figure out how to create also a wonderful, hospitable place of transformation. So thank you for that.
Of course, our pleasure. We're so excited for what you're doing and expanding the way this city is served. And I always say the coffee shop is the modern day water well, right? It's the place where people gather to exchange information in time and sort of take a pause.
Absolutely. Well, Ed, thank you so much. Blessings on your ministry, and let's talk again soon.